Let's call to order this meeting, Oconee County Planning Commission, Monday, November the 4th, at 6 p.m. First order of business is invocation. Ms. Stacy.
No, Lord, we come to you today just thanking you for this day. Thank you for the cooler weather, Lord, and we just ask that you be with all those, Lord, that don't have a home, keep them warm. Let us do our part to help them, Lord. Be with us through this meeting. Let us do everything in a way that would be pleasing to you and that would protect our fellow citizens, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Mike, will you lead us in the pledge? Mike Johnson.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, sir. All right, public comment for non-agenda items, Mr. Barnett.
Well, for the record, I'm Jerry Barnett. I always have been. I always will be. Bona fide member of the rural community, United States citizen that has served this great country in harm's way. I'd like to thank the individuals on this panel that will stand up for the rural community and the people's right to determine their own destiny. For those of you that pursue a personal agenda and want to use government to rob us of our birthright, shame on you. At some point, you will face your victims, and they are many. Now, we're the owners of this rural landmass, and we have paid a price, a great price, to maintain a free society. And for that, I'll fight to my dying day. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right, do we have any planning commissioner's response? All right, you have before you the minutes of the 10/21/2019 AM and PM meeting. There was the minutes for the meeting at Clemson with the Clemson City Planning Department, and then also the minutes for our meeting that night at 6 o'clock. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
Do we need to do them separately, or?
Was everyone at the? Yeah, let's go ahead and do them separately, since we have seven.
All right, the first one is for the meeting with Clemson City Planning Department.
I move that we accept.
Second.
Any discussion, corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, now we need a motion for the PM meeting minutes.
Make a motion they be approved as submitted.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any changes, corrections, or? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Mr. Adam, number 7.
All right. In front of you, you should have approximately 388 pages of paper that you all have spent the last 12 months on, at least, coming together. This is a first compiled draft, including the Bill of Rights, the South Carolina Right to Farm Act, the executive summary, all 10 elements, as well as in the front left pocket, you will find a compiled goal elements, goals, objectives, and strategies. That's approximately the last 2 to 4 pages of each element there. So here's the draft as requested.
All right, let's,
Should we go page by page?
Yeah.
Mr. Barnett, you're up first to speak public comment.
Again, I'm Jerry Barnett. And y'all have gone through quite an ordeal putting this doorstop together. I do hope that somehow you can amend this thing to keep it being used as a weapon against the rural community of Oconee County. Because we have those that live in a very, very small geographic area of this county that basically own no land. Yet they want to control those of us that do, for some strange reason. That's not the American way. And Dr. Ben Franklin, one of our most famous founders, left us with these words: those that would compromise liberty for a false sense of security deserve neither. And we have a few in the rural community that own tracts of land that have caved in to intimidation and surrendered their property rights to zoning. I hope that at some point we can revisit that and rescind some of that, because it violates everything this great nation stands for. You do deserve credit for including our Bill of Rights in this plan. Make sure that everybody understands the importance of the Bill of Rights. Also, South Carolina's Right to Farm Act and law. You cannot take away from the right to farm law, but you can add to it. Give it some teeth. Recognize the fact that we do have a right to farm law. In the past, that's been hidden from some of the victims that surrendered their right to control their own destiny. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Marcus.
For the record, I am Tom Markovich. Sorry I missed y'all last meeting. I'm not sure I'm really sorry. 2 hours, that's a long time to meet. But anyway, I watched it on YouTube and noted a certain number of things. And also read a few things in the newspaper, particularly about your meeting with the people in Clemson, which I thought was kind of interesting because there's no question Clemson is in a dilemma. They're going to continue to grow, and they've boxed themselves in the sense of this. They have a height ordinance, and they're getting tired of people spreading out. Now, figure it out. You can either have high density with height, or you can spread out and cover every square inch of green land, but you can't have it both ways. It's just that simple. And sooner or later, they may figure it out, but I don't know. Anyway, to our comprehensive plan. 380 pages. The first comprehensive plan in this county in 1996 was, I think, 46 pages. The next one, 2004, was around 148, something like that. And even at that 48, they weren't, sometimes there's just a graph and one sentence on a page. So, it really probably could have been a little more than 100 pages, maybe. Anyway, the one thing that I noticed, I did not read the entire, I've read all the different parts as they were coming up, every one. But I paid particular attention to all the goals and objectives as they're put together now. And it is so redundant because we're putting the same goals and objectives in so many of these elements. And it really, I understand, yeah, If you want sewer, it affects housing. If you want sewer, it affects infrastructure. If you want sewer, it affects land use. I get it. But putting those goals in every single element makes no sense whatsoever. These things need to be amended. It needs to be sorted out. It doesn't make any sense to just keep putting the same goals over and over and over going in each element. One of the things that I noticed also was after you get through all the goals and elements, on the second page after the title page, it talks about 12 months, 49 meetings, 500 attendees, 600 written comments, 1,100 surveys. Here's who it doesn't mention. 80% of the parcels that have been zoned in this county are still control-free. These people, 80%, have made a choice to maintain their property as control-free. They may be silent, but they're unquestionably a silent majority, and that needs to be taken into account. The future land use map. I understand why planners want to try and use something like this. 2004, we didn't have a future land use map. We did not have a future land, we had a little bit of a map in 1996 because of the airport overlay, and that was it. 2004 comprehensive plan, there was no future land use map. It's not required by law. I've read people saying that it is. It's not, never has been. Go try to find it in the state statutes. It's not there. It may make some sense in terms of zoning. That's when that map was adopted in this county. It was for the zoning thing. Had nothing to do with the comprehensive plan. It was later added to the comprehensive plan. But it had to do with zoning. It had nothing to do with the comprehensive plan when it was adopted. And so I realize a map like that is very difficult to do when you have so many different types of uses out there. But the fact that 80% of the people in this county have chosen to keep their property control-free, to me, says something. And maybe we need to look at the categories on that map in a different light. Because to me, that's not what I'm looking at right there is not representative of what this county really truly is. So the other thing is 380-something pages is a lot of work to do. You still have a whole year. You have a whole year. This thing does not have to be done until November the 9th, 2020. And so I would just say, we don't need to rush this thing. Let's just make sure we get this thing right. And if it can be refined, oh my God, it needs it. Thank you.
All right, open the floor for discussion on the comprehensive plan.
I have a couple things. Just that page that he started out on, the first page, it says 12 months, 49 meetings, 500 attendees, et cetera, et cetera. I couldn't understand the sentence underneath it. And I revised it, and I said, this plan was made by and for the people of Oconee County, period.
I kind of agreed, except I said, this plan was made by the people of Oconee County for the people of Oconee County. Just took out the word and, but.
Well, all right, I'm going to get this thing off a dead center so we can get going. I'll make a motion that we revise that sentence to read, this plan was made by and for the people of Oconee County, period.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I have another. At the beginning of the executive summary, there's a date there. It says 2030 Comprehensive Plan Executive Summary. It's under tab 1, the first page. I would suggest that 2030 be substituted, or we put in 2020 substituted for 2030 instead of 2030 comprehensive plan. It throws me off. Every one that I've looked at has been the date that it was initiated or adopted, not 10 years further down the road.
Yeah, I'll be honest, when I looked at the agenda, my first thought was, dang, I knew we'd been working a long time, but I didn't know, I didn't know I'd aged that much. I would either make it 2020-2030 if it's 10 years, or,
Well,
Same thing we've used those numbers interchangeably on several occasions, and I've called it the 2020 plan, and I've seen it written the 2030 plan. I think of it as a 2020 plan.
Do you know why they put that number in there, Adam?
I put that there, I mean, you can look at some plans, there's nothing set in stone for, it's completely stylistic.
What was our last one called?
It was just called the comprehensive plan.
It didn't have a year in there?
It doesn't necessarily have to, it just kind of for the title, I mean, we can call it anything we'd like to, whatever iteration of that. I think maybe the motion, if you all so chose to, would be to whatever that number looks like throughout the plan, because like the footers all say 2030, things of that nature. So just, to me, that would make sense, that way we don't have to start thumbing through it, looking for any.
I think it should be the origination date.
I do too. I'll make a motion that it be revised, 2030 be revised to reflect 2020, the origination date.
Throughout the plan?
Yeah, let's aggravate you some more.
Yeah, it's fine, it's
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to change the year on the comprehensive plan. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'm not through yet, but
Continue, sir.
I'm sorry. Let's just go to any GOS page, element goals, objectives, and strategies. And let me stop for a minute here and reflect, because what was said out here is really hits home. I've looked at probably about 20 of these comprehensive plans. Like Anderson County has 148 pages in their whole total plan. I don't know, we have really exceeded everybody's expectation, 300 and some odd pages. And we have gone completely out of the ballpark with 188 strategies. And you're right, we are repeating the same thing, it seems like, in each element many times. How many times you can talk about the sewer, but it's pretty far down the road now. But what I want to do, though, is look at these two columns that we have here. Time frame for evaluation, date completed. And I'm going to push the envelope a little bit here. I think we made real progress last time. First of all, we are one of the few counties that actually is putting down when we're going to try to do this and when we're going to try to complete it. A lot of these counties maybe have 4 or 5 goals, and then they have a recommendation. They have very few of them do things like we're doing. But I want to discuss the word annually, and I want to see if we can't substitute annually, ongoing for annually. I know that's going to upset you, Mike, but I'm wondering what we're going to do annually. Because I have the feeling that when you say annually, what is the process? Are we going to sit down and read all of these 140 strategies that don't have a date by them and say, okay, we've reviewed it annually? I think we might be getting into a corner there. I'd like for somebody else to enter this discussion at this point, but a lot of people use ongoing. I've never seen annually. It just seems like we're getting in a corner.
I think we purposefully removed ongoing, didn't we? Was that
Yes.
not a huge discussion?
It was at the last meeting.
I didn't know if it was the last meeting. I knew that at the beginning, it was brought up that it was something that was used very frequently and it was unsettling. All right, let me ask you this question then. What is the process that we're going to use for annually reviewing? Are we, I mean, annually is every year, so are we going to read this strategy and say, all right, we have reviewed it and met the criteria for reviewing it annually? Or are we just going to hope nobody raises that question?
Is that it, or and maybe ongoing is the appropriate word. I mean, when you look at the strategies that have it out beside it, it is more of a staff assignment that this is part of your job description.
Well, you can find a lot of different things, but I just wonder if we aren't getting ourselves in a box here when we say annually, and what I'm thinking is, somebody stands up in front of the county council and says, what are you guys doing annually about strategy, da-da-da-da-da? And they say, what did those guys down there in the planning commission do to us?
Does anybody remember why we changed it from?
Well, it's probably, if it was, the situation was switched the moment, we'd probably have the same conversation. So perhaps us going through the ones that say annually / ongoing / there's not a number assigned to them, maybe you all look at those ones, and perhaps if you all wanna review it more thoroughly, is take the packet that's in the left hand, which is a combination of all the goals, and look at those ones. Are those ones that are, I know it's hard to say take out something that says coordinate and collaborate with regional agencies, like why would we wanna remove that kind of thing? But it's also, and I'm just looking at the very first one, that's 2.112 on the first page of that. It's kind of like, oh, we don't wanna, of course we wanna collaborate with regional agencies. Or you remove it and just take it as an assumption. That's kinda up to y'all, or we put a date to them and say, because it does say time frame for evaluation.
I'm just gonna be the teacher here for half a second. All right, the one you just pointed out, 2.1.1.2, coordinate and collaborate with regional agencies. Obviously, that is ongoing. It should occur all the time, year after year. That is part of what you do today, tomorrow, the next day. If you go back to 11.1.6.4. Yeah, sorry.
It's the very last page.
Is it the very last page? Okay. And the only reason was, I think I remember when we started this conversation that we had ongoing in so many places that might have had a better word, and here is one where I can see that ongoing would not have fit. Continue to cultivate ecotourism opportunities in key areas such as near the new mountain bike facility at Stump House Tunnel and planned expansions of county parks. That might not be something that you do every day. It might not be something that you do, but certainly once a year, you might want to review, are there grants available? Are there, have we filled up all the areas near the bike facility and maybe now we need to focus on Chalram or, so I think the words they're not interchangeable, but we use them interchangeably. And perhaps we need to be a little more thoughtful as we go back through them and look back over them, or ask you to go through them and look back.
So I literally just switch out ongoing for annually because I wasn't given any sort of direction as to what that should look like. I just knew that it wasn't something I felt comfortable putting a finite date on. So if you all wanna go back through it, certainly, and give me and depending on how you all wanna look at it.
I also wondered if we did literally have a good journalism person that we could refer to, who, because their specialty quite often is taking a massive amount of information and editing it so that it's succinct and to the point. Not literally, but I mean.
Yeah, I'm with you, I know, I understand what you're saying.
Who could go through and do a little editing, do a little condensing, do a little, that would be my last request before this moved any further forward. That, and I don't mind going through and working on the annually versus ongoing versus assumed daily would be open to ways to protect water quality. you know, so that if you're reading across something you came up with, I don't mind doing that at all, but I agree with Mr. Markovich in that it is a long and difficult thing to read. In trying to read it, I actually flipped back and forth, couldn't concentrate on any given set of information more than a few minutes at a time, and some of the sentences are so long that we need someone that's more succinct at wording.
Would it be the responsibility of the consultants that we've paid
Yes.
to
I would think that'd be a good
review
place
of
to
this
start.
and say, cut the paragraphs down?
Are we talking about the GOS, Mike?
Well, actually, the content and the body of the document itself.
Because we specifically asked them for a more condensed version.
Well, I remember the first meeting we had when we sat down here, and I kind of exposed myself and said, let's make this thing short. And they kind of took exception to that. They like to produce paper and words.
Well, they need to go back and read over what they wrote. If the sentences are extremely long and cumbersome, then, that's not what we paid them for. It should be easy to read. We specifically stated we wanted something that was workable, easy to read, that the community could easily grab this book and know what our vision is.
Are we saying?
So,
I'm not saying turn this whole plan back over to those folks. I don't disagree with the fact that we certainly paid them for something, but this is just a sentence that I just had to turn. I had to get back on another topic. This is in the land use element. These elements provide the foundation of the land use element and inform the need. How do you inform the need? For various types of land uses to include residential, agricultural, commercial, industrial, public, institutional, and recreational land. That's a sentence that is 3 printed lines long.
and in hearing it, I couldn't tell you what it meant.
No,
Well, I had brought up a couple sentences to you, to ask you, I couldn't understand what they meant too. Are you suggesting, or are we coming down, making a silent or a kind of a quasi-suggestion that maybe we need to go back and not only look at the GOS, but the text too?
I think that the consultant should do one last run through the text itself.
To accomplish, to try to reduce the number of pages?
To try and reduce the number of pages, try and reduce
Sentence structure to understandable?
sentence structure. I think that
That's
example
key.
alone could bring it down into a more clarified statement.
I think we should ask them for one of them to read through this plan and think about the average citizen of this county, not somebody that has, the highest of high educations, the average citizen of this county in mind, and can they understand this? If not, then they need to reword it.
Adam, where are we with those consultants, cost-wise?
Oops, they paid them yesterday.
So, when we first started this, there was a couple of options, like back in October or November, talking about, so I gave you all the option of either me just coming to you at the end and hand you this book, or us going through section by section, element by element, and handing it to you. As such, we've been billed and been paying section by section. So every time we closed it out, we voted on it, read the minutes for at the next meeting, and accepted the minutes. We've accepted that we've exchanged that money for this element. So I can certainly go back, we can certainly do it in-house, or I can ask them, there was some extra budget left. I believe there probably should be a couple bucks left to see what would be, inside of that. But what we're talking about is a lot of stylistic stuff here. We're talking about style, and that's a difficult goal to reach. Now, as far as page length goes, we've added pages to this through, people to ask to add paragraphs, people to ask to add things throughout the course of this. So I can certainly ask them if they'll do it, and if we still have the budget for it. But we have gone through this and paid as we went. We felt it. So I'll go double check and see how much is left in that budget, and talk to them tomorrow about it. So we can certainly do that. Or if we want to kind of go through this again like we have, or maybe set up some kind of committee or working group for it to kind of go back through and chop down some pages of it, I'm not against that. We can certainly do any of that stuff. So I'll work tomorrow, I'll speak with them, I'll see where we're at with that. But I think we should either be prepared to ask for a change order, for more money for it. I'm not saying that's the case, just maybe back your head, kind of be prepared for that, or find a different way to go about editing this, because we have looked at all these pages a couple times.
What?
Let me, are we talking about the GOS section also?
I would just-
For redundancy there, or just the text?
So that was the entire, I'd just say just the entire document. I believe that's what was asked. Just now, what we're talking about is the entire document. If we want to talk about just the goals section, we can start tearing into that. I mean, if that's what the ask is, I mean, I can dedicate the next couple of days to looking at that myself. But was that the ask? Is it the whole thing, or is it just the goals section?
And what if we each took one section and took it home and read it, focused, where it's quiet, and write down what you find that is wrong?
Are you gonna
Or that
grade
is-
it? Because you're a hard grader.
No, I just think, I hate to ask them if we've already paid them for it, but on the other hand, a lot of times you write something and it's easy to do it bit by bit and say what you think you've said, but if you don't take the time to read back over the entire thing with your mind clear, and read what you said instead of reading what you thought you said or meant to say, sometimes in the process of editing it, particularly on a computer where you don't see everything in one page, it's easy then to go, yeah, that sounds good, and go on to the next, scroll up to the next spot. So, and for me, that it was not until I sat down literally with this in hand and started reading the entire thing and going, oh my gosh, where's that going? That I began to think, we really need some editing work. And all I could think was literally a graduate level language person. Not that that's, I thought a high school group would be nice, but I don't think they'd be able to. I think it's above their level. But, if each of us took one, just pick one. And let's all make sure that we've covered at least one. And read it and then get it back to Mr. Chapman yesterday.
I would have, well, it just depends on the time frame for it. I mean, we can certainly take your time for it. If you all are willing to do that, homework historically has not been,
Let me ask you, I'm sorry, Adam.
good.
How many people would be willing to do that, to burrow in to one of these elements? I would, and Gwen would. Anybody else willing to burrow in?
I'll be honest, the economic one, we don't have to do it. Because to me, it's well-written, it's succinct, it's to the point.
That was the one I was gonna take.
Sorry. You take that one and another one. But that, it's almost like the role model for how the rest of them should be done. And it has long sentences. I'm not saying that sentence structure is the issue necessarily, but it's when you have inform the need in the middle of a long sentence and you're going, how do you inform the need? I can step back and maybe understand that sentence, but I think there's a lot better way to phrase it. And so, I'm certainly willing to take two. I've already taken on the number 11 because I started at the beginning, got frustrated and went to the back and then got more frustrated, but I've already done part of number 11. I don't mind.
The challenge is by each of us taking one element is that would be asking 7 of us to write a book, and one's going to come out with a children's story, and one of us is going to come out with a novel, and it's going to look weird, in my opinion, to bounce through it if we start doing it that way.
The style's not
The
going to be
style's not
consistent.
going to be consistent through.
But we've been over this thing for the last 11 months and looked at every single element in here why wasn't any of this brought up before now that we have a finished document?
Well, we did, and we added paragraphs, and we took paragraphs out, and we changed sentences, and we added words.
Yeah, I think for me, most of the time when I was looking at it element by element, I was looking at parts and pieces. What's in it? What are our goals? I was not sitting down and reading it for pleasure. And suddenly realizing that in reading for pleasure, there are parts of it that don't make sense.
Wait, we had spent a lot of our time on the goals, objectives, and strategies, and we didn't spend that much time on the text.
And I don't mind if pushing it one meeting, I mean, I'll do as much as I can between now and the next meeting.
And
Just staying focused on reading a little bit here and a little bit there, making a note. I don't mind doing it, volunteering to do it.
If I may, the reason why I kind of pushed y'all towards the goals section is because this is the actionable party of that. If we're running out of the building, you're gonna grab this portion. So if we're gonna take that initial step to kind of do a big edit, before we start getting just dragged down by it and kind of just mentally exhausted by it, if we went through this portion first, I'll say it's 20 pages because it's front and back, but it's 40 pages. And seeing what you all feel is repetitive and what doesn't make sense, if you want to start looking at that. And this is much more digestible, bite-sized piece.
But what is the public gonna grab, the text or that?
Well, if I was gonna guess, I would say the goals and objectives and strategies.
See, I wouldn't have, if it was me, I would have read the text. But, hey, it's just me.
And the reason why it's so long is that it is comprehensive in nature. Are there shorter plans? Certainly. Yeah, there are, but just the name of it's comprehensive. Sure that we can trim off whatever you like, but I'll still stick to my guns on the fact that the goals section is the most important portion of this.
So in the comp plan, is this gonna be like stuck in the front of everybody's, it's gonna be separated?
That was, yeah, that's why it's stuck up there. That would be mine, it's rolling with it. Because if you're gonna have to grab something, this is and this isn't friendly to read. I mean, it's a list
Yeah.
of stuff. So we can certainly edit, but if we're gonna start editing somewhere, if you all wanna start in the body of the text, that's certainly your thing. Like I said, I will go tomorrow and I'll have a conversation and see what's left monetarily in our budget for this comprehensive plan.
Well, so are we saying then for the text, you're gonna go back then and talk to the consultants? Is that right? And see if they can shorten it or make the sentences a little easier to understand? Or are we going to try to do it individually up here? Or are we just gonna pass on it?
I think he's first going to the consultants and see where we are as far as budget and cost.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do we
And
need
in
to
the
make a
meantime-
motion for that?
Oh, well, I mean, since, especially if there's money potentially involved, I think that would probably be the wisest, course of action, if that's what you all so wish. But yeah,
Is that what you all wanna do?
Let me ask another question. Gwen, do you think that there is someone at Clemson, like, for some kind of credit? That they could
Some kind of
read
credit?
through this? No, I'm serious.
No,
They
it's
have like courses,
They have interns, they have,
well, you can
work
like
study,
make your
they
own
have.
course.
Yeah, I'm afraid we might be a tad late on,
I was gonna
on
say probably
asking,
November.
asking for that, since they're gonna have exams December something. I don't know, I mean, sir, you could reach out, I mean, that's a possible reach out point. I would be more inclined to, I taught with an outstanding, language teacher at West Oak High School, and he now has his PhD, and I actually thought about taking this today and going, hey, have you got in your spare time, would you mind looking at this or helping me rephrase some things where I was struggling with, how could you say that more, where it would be more easily read? And just did not, I mean, I knew that the deadline was coming down, I will confess, I knew, but it, like I said, all the other times, we had an element, and you were reading through it and looking for details and picking up bits and pieces that supported this or that. But then all of a sudden, to have the whole chapter sitting there in front of you and just read it to see what it says, you start bogging down in some things that I think a really good writer could probably help us with. And again, I do not mind a bit, especially if they tell us we don't have any money left, in just simply asking Dee if he would mind doing that.
Do you feel like you would get a more usable product from him than you would from the consultants?
Well, this is what we got from the consultant.
Yeah,
So-
that's kind of,
And I don't have, I think they've done an excellent job. They've compiled a lot of great information. But I think it's just like when you're writing anything else, when you're looking at it in small bits and pieces, and you know what you're saying, you can't always go back over that and make sure that what you put on here is what you meant to say, instead of what you put on here. Does that make sense? I'm sorry,
Right,
Mr.
It's
Chapman.
stylistic. I mean, I get it. I mean, I read it within a different lens and for different reasons than you all are reading it. I'm reading it with different, we all, as your various businesses, we all look at things through just different lenses. So, yeah, I understand that portion. There was some mention brought up that the goal section is repetitive and portions, things of that nature. While I'm looking at, because that's something that they're gonna start tearing out. So if you all wanna start looking at the goals, objectives, and strategies, the short book, I'll figure out what we have left, what we can and can't do with the comp plan from the consultant's
So
perspective.
you would suggest we up here get a group together, or in total, look at the GOS section?
Yeah, you all look at the goal section, objective, I mean, I've read them, but maybe I just haven't seen the duplication of it. But like I said, we all have to, once we put it all together as one big book, perhaps, you see things differently. So I can do that, but I would probably need a pretty clean and clear motion and vote in order to ask consultants to do stuff, because I don't wanna go spend money, if we have any money in the budget, and it not come out differently, because we're looking at a lot of stylistic things.
well, can we, if you're willing to do it, Gwen, with the assistance of Dr. Tyndall, can I just make a motion that we let that happen?
We can certainly ask to see if that's gonna go on. That's a very magnanimous person who's gonna sit down and edit this document. But we certainly ask, sure, hey, that's wonderful. Civic pride is great. If somebody else wants to put another set of eyes on this, doesn't bother me at all.
See, I don't think even if we go through and edit all of the text, I don't think it's so much the wording or the sentence structure. I just flip this open to the cultural element, and they have the National Register districts listed, but there's also 3 paragraphs that explain what National Register listings are. So, I mean, I think there's some content there that can be
Short.
Yeah.
Edited, and that's
if
why I
it's-
say it takes a writer, because a lot of times when somebody like that, who's good at writing and who's good at getting ideas across, they look at something and it's this long, when you can say the same thing in this much. And that's the beauty of editing, is if you've got someone who's good at it, they can cut out words that are, verbosity, is that the correct term?
I think
Let's
it
take
just
that word out of
depends
here.
I think it's just gonna be a hard thing to just kind of reword. I think we're gonna lose some of the content, so it probably does need to be looked at closer than just having somebody go through and edit it, and try and shorten it. Because we may lose something that we spent time trying to add in for some reason or another, so I think that's the difficulty.
So where are we at this? Where are we?
I don't know, and I don't even know if that Dee is willing, but I'm willing to go through it and read it and try, for me, there's one page that there's like 17 grammatical errors in just one page that certainly needs to be corrected. And those are things I'm willing to do. I'm willing to go to review it and get it back to you, Mr. Chapman, within 2 weeks.
Whatever time
Good.
frame you get back is great. It wouldn't be a force.
That would be wonderful.
that, and then you probably, I know you couldn't get it in the mail in that timeframe.
Again, you hand edit it,
Right, sir?
you hand edit it.
Because that's the only way, I don't know how to do all that stuff on the computer where you got Word and it kicks out and says in yellow that I edited this or that. No, you never find anything again.
Anybody watch
So-
my face here?
Because all your head edits, then he has to go and computer edit, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's, okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
I'll have to translate your, so we can get together over the course of whatever
Those 2
timeframe that
weeks.
is, and you can kind of read, you can edit and then kind of tell me what needs to be what.
I could bring my hand notes and you could put it in the computer.
Right, but you may have to read them to me, because
Yeah, that's fine.
I
That's
don't know all the shorthand
Okay, that's fine.
stuff. But so,
He's got
since we have money, we may have still some money left for editing. Do we want to ask them to do it, since this is what they gave us, or not?
Well, if there's a ton of grammatical errors in there, we shouldn't be charged for that, because they should have gave us a finished product as far as it should have been correct. Grammatically,
There are errors in there.
then we shouldn't be charged for that. And you should fight them on that, because they shouldn't have sent us a substandard document.
Well, they have PhDs.
What do you expect?
But,
They're not doctors, but I'm just, okay, that's fine.
but, you
I
know,
agree.
anything that we ask them to do, like redo, that's one thing. But grammatical errors and stuff, they should have checked for that before they sent it to us.
So Gwen is going to do 2 elements and get back to you, is that right? And then you're going to talk to them about money or something?
So that's why I think we would kind of talk to ourselves in I don't know where we're at the moment, to be honest.
I didn't set a limit on my elements, because I've worked on almost every element. And I have bits and pieces. It would just be a matter of dedicating myself to finishing, marking the grammatical things and going back with, maybe with a highlighter so I can find all my notes. That's gonna take some time. But, I mean, I don't mind doing the whole thing, just in that way, doing the grammatical things. If there's a sentence that does not make any sense, I can rephrase the sentence so that it at least says something, as long as I'm not adding 4 more sentences to make it make sense. I don't mind doing that if we can have another couple weeks and I can bring it up to Mr. Chapman.
Absolutely.
Is that fine with everyone?
I will certainly seek all the help I can
Do we need-
possibly find.
Do we need a motion for that, or we can just?
The main thing I'm thinking is, we don't want to go to council and ask them for more money for the.
Right.
No, that's right, yeah.
It was act of Congress to get this part done. So if we can get it done in-house, it would be a whole lot better.
So, to that end, then, we no longer,
No longer want to ask for money right now.
so, okay, for the consultant, so if we're saying, thanks for the document, go, am I cutting them loose now? Is that what's happening? Because if we're gonna do all the changes over here, I still have a group of people waiting around, so what am I doing with them, is my question? Because if we're now gonna take all the editing in-house,
What are our options at this point with them?
I'm gonna find out tomorrow, but if this is what we got, if we're not 100% satisfied with stylistically and with what we have, then us going back to the same people to fix it, I don't know, solves the issue. So I'm asking, what should we do with them? They're still under contract with us. Should I keep them or should I cut them loose? Because I'm not saying fire them, they provided us with the document. I'm just trying to see just hang them around or,
Don't cut them loose yet. Tell them we're still in review.
okay,
Yeah, because.
See what happens in 2 weeks.
with,
Well, I mean, we have another meeting in 2 weeks, and let's see what.
I mean,
If Gwen identifies that there's 50 pages with errors, then we probably want to send that back to them and say, you need to fix the errors.
okay,
If Gwen finds 50 pages that can be cleaned up, then we take Gwen's recommendations on cleaning those up.
Well, I mean, I don't know that I'd ask them to fix the errors, because if I found them, I'm probably gonna fix them. Because my
Right,
eye
and
just isn't gonna let it
If
go.
if she's reading off the
Yeah.
stylistic stuff, I don't imagine we like skip over a missing comma just because, you know.
We're not gonna put comma here, and ask them to do it. We would just do it.
So
Have they not put the document through a spell check and grammar check, program?
I don't think those do very well with these kind of,
Data-driven sentences.
yeah, I mean, that's for stuff where people have written.
the Grammarly and the Microsoft Pro, whatever they call it, it didn't highlight or redline stuff for us when we ran it through there, so. I mean, stuff that always shows up wrong.
The spelling hasn't been a problem, it's just been the
So,
small grammatical problems.
so regarding the content of the paragraphs, we're gonna let Gwen review it and digest it and massage it or whatever that she can do over the next couple of weeks to see where we might be able to clean that up a bit.
Sure.
Now we're on the goal part.
I would
How are
like,
we gonna address?
I would like us to drop the time frame and date completed from the form. I think we discussed that before, but since it seems to be a problem, let's, think about that again.
When the 5-year update, we go through the goals and everything again, correct?
We're not married to the 5-year time. We have to do it 5 years. We can do it whenever.
Okay. I mean, that's part of the update and review is to go through the
Yes.
goals and objectives.
Well, did we not settle on the word annually because we did not want this just to get stuck on a shelf and nobody ever look at it? We wanted ourselves to have to pull it out every year and look at it and see where we were?
I think we did, actually.
I think that was kind of the reason we were using annually, is so that somebody was actually looking at this thing and not just sticking it on a shelf.
Well, I think if we use the word annual, we do need to set up a,
Process.
for us to take a look at this once a year, whether it's the November meeting or whatever it happens to be. Go ahead and have it set up to where we review the goals.
See if we made any progress that year.
Yeah.
Well, are we, I had asked that we substitute ongoing for annually, and that kind of got mixed response.
Well, we dropped ongoing in favor of annually last time.
Well, that was 2 weeks ago. All right, I'm gonna make a motion that we substitute ongoing for annually in the time frame for execution.
It's for evaluation. not
Evaluation, I'm
execution.
sorry, I don't have my glasses on. Thank you.
We have a motion, need a second?
Apparently not.
Apparently not. Okay. How about this? How about if in front of annually you put review?
So,
In other words, that tells us,
so the motion has died since there has not been a second.
Motion died without a second, yes, sorry about that.
Well, we have evaluation, timeframe for evaluation. That just means that we have to evaluate it or review it once a year.
well, I was gonna put review with annually, say review annually. Because I keep asking the system, keep asking, and Alex is saying the same thing. What is the procedure for annually? Are we gonna sit down in November or January and read through these strategies and say, okay, we've reviewed it? I mean, if that's a process, then maybe we need to be sure it's in the minutes so that we have this documented.
I mean, I'd agree with you. I think if we're gonna put it annually, we need to
We need to do
say
something
we're gonna do it
annually other
annually
than adjourn.
and move forward.
Yeah.
We could break it up into probably 15 or so of them for each meeting, and then we don't ever have to do anything else,
Well, I think,
because we won't have any
I
time.
don't know how long it'll actually take to review
but if we
these
start
annually.
doing that, well, January, we review something that we just did. We haven't gave them time to look at it. I think at the end of the year, we set aside, whether it's November, whatever, we set aside the meetings of that month and say, okay, we've got to see what progress we've made. so we know what we need to be focusing on for the next year.
And then too, that'll make it a whole lot easier in 5 years when we have to do an update.
Yep.
It'll be practically updated before we even get to that point.
Of course, the people that, the county council members go to their strategic session, and that's in the implementation plan. They're the ones that kind of set the trends or give us direction in which direction to go in.
What do you mean?
The strategic meeting that they have.
I'm confused how that what that has to do
But
with
if that's true,
other
then in
things.
January, Ms. Brock would bring it right to county council at their, is it December?
No,
I
I
can't
think it's in
remember.
February or something.
Okay, well, anyway, so they would go through that strategic meeting, set out the ones that they know, or that are going to be their goals to work on for the thing. Then if we review it in either December or January, if we set that aside, that might be a good way to start the year, each January. We know that they've had a full year to work on what they listed as strategic. Then we can get a report on what they finished, because that's part of that program, right, with Ms. Brock.
Okay,
She does a strategic thing, and then y'all keep council informed as to how it's moving along.
Who's gonna generate the report on each one of these items for us to review?
Well, that's part of the discussion of the procedure. Are we going to generate a report, or are we just going to do it orally?
If I may, so the timeframe for evaluation, so it was timeframe for completion, so if we thought timeframe for completion was no good, says 2025, that means at some point between January 1 and January 1, 2020 and December 31st, 2025, we would have started it and completed it. So we weren't a big fan of that. So now, evaluation, if I recall the conversation we had last meeting, was that we'd say, okay, coordinate and collaborate with regional agencies. We're looking at it, that's not for us this year. Let's look what's going on, 2023, evaluate by 2023. Okay, interface with Oconee County School District, and so on and so forth. Okay, we're gonna do that by 2023, we're gonna do it this year. So we can look at it in 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. That was kind of how I thought the conversation went last time. If that's not
Okay.
how we're looking at the word evaluate means, then perhaps we need to look at it stronger. Mr. Smith brought up removing it, a timeframe at all, not my favorite. I thought evaluation kind of worked well last time. But if the word annually is the hangup, and it doesn't fit everywhere, as Ms. McPhail mentioned, then we could go through it and say, it's annually for this, it's ongoing for this, kind of thing, if that's what you all would like to do. I realize that it kind of feels a little rough right now. What would make it work better for you? If this is a plan for your personal household, what would you do? If you were this kind of person,
No.
probably wouldn't be fine.
No.
But if we were this kind of person and you're gonna do this plan for your house, how would you all do it?
You really want to know?
Yeah, I mean, hey, we're talking it out.
Well, nothing's ever gonna get done if you don't go back and look over it. I mean, I think that was the whole point of the annually, is we're not gonna know what still needs done if we don't go back and look over this. And that's why we used evaluation. We're just gonna look over it every
So-
year and see where we're at.
So some of these goals are more driven, in my opinion, to staff job description, as I'd mentioned before. We're going to, whatever it might be, and I didn't pick one in particular, but it seems more staff-driven, that this is truly an ongoing activity, job description of staff. Some of these do seem like annually, the planning commission needs to sit down and say, is this something we're about ready to bite off this year? Do we want to dive into this deeper this year? So maybe it is that staff goes through these and things that truly are ongoing staff job responsibilities. Stay in touch with XYZ agency over their activities each year. That's a staff activity. It's truly ongoing. It's not that we're going to choose for them not to do that this year. but maybe staff needs to go through and potentially see which of these items are truly ongoing versus annually, that we need to determine if this is something we're gonna take on and how we're doing with it.
Okay, I'm not so concerned about when we annually look at what we might do in the future. I'm wanting to know how we're gonna handle when we have a meeting this time next year. Where do we get the data from to see what we have done the past year? What have we accomplished? We don't do much of anything. There's other parties here that have things to do. They don't report to us. Somebody's got to gather the data, or we don't know if anything's been done.
That would be the administrator. We can have all the strategies, when we got 188 strategies, but if you don't have an implementation plan, the strategies mean nothing. And if you go in here and look at this implementation plan, it might answer some questions here. And walk you through this thing. This is, it's under tab 1, and it's towards the back. It's the last page. And this is really the key to all these strategies. And it starts at the strategic planning session. Is that not right? You can
No,
add.
that's, yes. So
So
what does that mean?
do
that we want to
you, how does everybody feel about maybe Vivian going back through this and reviewing annually and ongoing, and let's see what we come up with the next time, because Gwen's gonna come back with some text changes. And let's see what we've got.
All right, just to clarify, if you don't mind, look at 11.1.2.3. No, I mean, this is simple.
Which one, Gwen?
11 point, is on page 38
Okay.
Of the small.
of the small, the easy page. Review and consolidate land use regulations to improve clarity, remove duplication, ensure consistency, and streamline review and administration. My guess is that that is something that Mr. Chapman and Vivian do every single day, or every single opportunity through every single week, as you work day to day to day. If you see something that is a flub or a stumbling block or anything, and anybody that comes into your office asking for this sort of stuff, you work on making it easier, because that's what y'all do. So that does not, to me, need to be an annual goal. That is an ongoing, like y'all are talking about, staff directed. And I would think that at any given point, as far as completed, at the end of the, you can just share with us periodically where you do work on regulations and things that people work with to make it easier. That was just one that I found in reading.
Well, how about if I volunteer to work with the planning department to go through these and see if we can come up with ongoing or annually? How would people feel about that?
That's fine.
I have no objection to that. I do see that you're correct, that there is a difference, I think, between the two words. I'm using the ongoing as a staff-driven job responsibility kind of item, as opposed to annually being something that the planning department needs to look at and say, where do we stand on this? Is this something that needs further looked at this year?
Here.
with more emphasis.
And here's an example of one of those that, to me, at the end of the year, or January, whatever it would be an excellent thing for us to ask, to say, what's been done on this particular one? Page 31, strategy 9.2.1.8. Upgrade county roads that were built prior to current standards and align roads that pose safety hazards if feasible. We can look at how many miles of county roads have we improved, or what's been done to alleviate this problem. And that would be all we need is to hear from the roads department, and they said, yes, this year we did this. And then we know we've done it, and then next year we'll review it again and ask for additional roads that have been alleviated or whatever. Until hopefully at some point we'll have county roads, there'll be 0 county roads that are not up to standard.
And to me, annually is more appropriate.
And
than
annually
ongoing.
is appropriate there.
Bullseye there.
Okay, I have a question. Does each department, I read through the how to implement the plan that you wrote. Does each department report to the administrator, like, what they have accomplished this year? Like, from the strategy session?
From council's strategic planning.
Yes. She will know what each department has done, right? Okay, because the last paragraph of the how to implement is the county administrator should report progress to county council on a regular basis as part of the performance review process. All we have to do is say, and inform the planning commission annually of the progress. That way we get the report that council's getting, and we go through and we figure out what's been done and what hadn't been done. All we have to do is go in here and fill in our dates, because she gives us what each department got accomplished that year.
Unless I have any objections, Tom wants to say a few words.
One, I agree with the idea of the administrator being able to do some of this stuff. Never forget, by statute, this body, the commission, has the authority to ask any department to come in and make a report at any time, and they are bound by law to do that. I mean, all you have to do is set up a system for putting these reports into place, make the request, and they're required by law to come in and answer to what it is you're trying to figure out. So, I mean, because I think this is a daunting task for even putting on the administrator, whereas you've got all these different departments that might, now that doesn't mean you can request a municipality to come in from, it's not within your jurisdiction, but within the county, the departments. That is a power that the commission has and should be used.
So we could just, have Ms. Brock look at this, compare it to the strategic workshop, and she should be able to tell us what they accomplished. What on this has been accomplished that year.
That's correct. It should, in theory, that's correct. The strategic plan tends to be a bit less lengthy than this does. I think it was only a couple
1,000 pages.
few pages.
But from that, she can take it and say, okay, this, they said they were gonna do this, that satisfies this.
Yeah, yes.
So we just need the report from her, and if she wants to just translate it to this, that would be easy.
Okay, if we're gonna do that, we need to probably ask for those reports with whatever funding cycle that she's already doing.
Yeah, I just put the word annually in there. I mean, so she can decide, what time of the year she wants to do that, as long as it's once a year. If she has a certain month that she already does all of that stuff, then just give it to us then.
That makes sense?
I think we changed heading here all of a sudden. And I don't disagree with the heading you're going down, but let's get back to the other heading. We were going to go through annually and ongoing. And I said I would work with the planning department to see if we couldn't go through and review these.
Do we need a motion for that?
Yeah, let's
Or
do it.
just-
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, I'll make a motion.
make a motion, Mike.
That Mike Smith and the planning department get together and review the time frame for evaluation, specifically annually, to see if ongoing is more appropriate.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Y'all gonna do this within the next 2 weeks? Or is it gonna be,
We can do it within the next 2 weeks, yeah.
Well, we would have to be done by next, the
Okay.
Wednesday,
we'll do-
before the next.
Yeah,
meeting.
we'll do it by next Wednesday.
just clarify that, okay?
And it would be reviewed with the filter of, is this an ongoing job responsibility? Or is this something that planning commission needs to make decisions about on an annual basis?
You want to add that in the motion?
No, I'm just saying,
No, you're right, though. You're absolutely right.
so, anyway.
Okay, if we don't have any further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, do we need a motion for Ms.?
I make a motion that on the how to implement the plan, last paragraph, we add and inform the planning commission annually of progress.
I'll second that one.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Do we need a motion for Ms. McPhail to do her correcting?
Edit the document
And
as a
editing.
whole, yes, because I don't want to do that without.
I want to make,
I'll make a motion that the commission allow me to spend time doing grammatical and ease of reading, editing on the current elements, the 11 elements that are included, 10 elements that are included in the
I'll second
comprehensive
that.
plan.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you
thank you.
for doing that.
Anything else on the comp plan?
Yeah, so we're going to come back in 2 weeks at the next meeting, and then hopefully maybe we can move forward with it a little bit further. We move forward, and then we go back a few feet. Is that not right? It's not time to say, wrap it up and send it up. We're far from that.
So, there was just 3 motions made and voted on to edit the document.
All right.
So no, I would go ahead and wait until those edits come in before we assume that all those edits are
Acceptable.
accepted for you all.
Okay, I have one question for Mr. Markovich. Can I do that?
Yep. come on.
Have you seen the new land use map that we redid? I was just wanting your opinion on
The new land use map or the new future land use
the
map?
new future land use map. Did
I
you
did see
it?
the one that's got the little striped pink place across the,
Well, we turned more of it back to where it resembles the current one a little closer, without being dots here, dots there.
yeah, I have seen this one.
What's your opinion?
I think we're making assumptions here about certain types of residential growth in areas that may or may not, I mean, it's rural. And I'm not sure that those are in the next 10 years that we're gonna see, and these are, again, this is already zoned properties. They're already, I don't know that we're gonna see those kind of growths in some of these areas. For example, all up and down this 183 area, I'm trying to look for your color chart, but,
Rural, suburban.
you know, even up in here, I mean, you can go back to the, quite a ways, and you'll see even up in here, these residential areas. I mean, they show residents along the lake, but it's a much smaller area, and I think that's probably right. There's a lot of timber up in here. There's no infrastructure up in there, and it's very unlikely there's gonna be any infrastructure for the next, I don't know, 10 years. There's gonna be some up around the upper part of Highway 11, up around Salem. That might, and how much of that'll actually end up being residential, I'm not really sure. But there will be commercial all up in there. No question about that. If you take water up there, it's gonna make a big difference in the ability to put commercial businesses in there. They can't do it right now because they can't put in sprinkler systems unless they build a pool so they have a source of water. So, all these different things are how the infrastructure affects what that map is gonna end up looking like. It's really as much as, and then when you get down around Fairplay, what's gonna happen when the sewer gets down there, and I realize it's probably 4 or 5 years out. But when you get the sewer down in there and you get the water down in there, how that's gonna interplay and how it's gonna affect certain areas. And so, but some of these other areas, I do think the Fairplay area is gonna remain, some of these, not just Fairplay, but between Fairplay and Seneca, I think that will stay agricultural, but we can't lose sight of the fact that it's already zoned and it's control-free. That's the usage, it's control-free. And so it's really gonna come down to infrastructure and how it develops, and that's what's gonna make that map look one way or the other.
Well, is that not, but to me, that is the use of that map. When you look at that and say, Highway 11, there's already a city there. If we're looking for funding for infrastructure, then if you have said, we would expect some development there because there's already residential, there's already this, and then you use that to steer where you're spending for your infrastructure. Is that not what that's for? You steer your, in other words, we go back to the school where you suddenly decide out in the boonies you're gonna stick a school. Without any planning whatsoever in advance that's going to provide for that until bam, it's there. And so, I've always been told that's what that is for, is so that when they're looking, when other groups, not just council, not just planning commission, but other groups that are seeking funds for things like that, they're going, oh, okay, well, that they're we would kind of expect growth around that city because people are gonna move into that area. There is already lake development there. That is the popular place. So if we're gonna seek funding, that's where we need to look at putting it.
I can understand that concept in a way.
The way you're, and I don't mean to, maybe I'm just too dumb to understand what you're saying, but it sounds like you're describing that we need to wait and draw it after it's already there. And then it's no longer a future land use map. It's a, this is how it looks today, which would mean we'd have to change it every 4 or 5 years. And then it's just a matter of, just like where the school is, we just simply react to once it's there.
I can tell you this. How I would look at this map is this, in the sense that there are some things that we already know. Sewer at I-85. That's going to, I would put a section on there that looks at this becoming a commercial area. So what does that tell you about your road infrastructure? It says it's not adequate.
Doesn't it? It does.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can raise it up, but it does that, in fact.
Right.
And that tells that, yes, that's the places where we need to be asking,
Right.
what are we doing to make sure that these are double paved roads or extra wide roads or whatever needs to be done in that area to accommodate that growth that we know is gonna come. It's not there yet, but we believe it will be there in the future.
But it means there's gonna have to be some road improvements down in here, and it means that you're gonna get streaks running up through these various areas, no doubt about it. Same thing as some of these other areas up through here.
But that's what that's what to
like
me
it a
that
lot
is
better,
the
yeah.
point. It is a future land use map. It does not reflect what it is. It reflects what we think it should be and should be in fact planning for.
I'm always gonna be cautious about the word should.
Yeah, that's,
I agree, and I'm not saying may, but in other words, we know that sewer's already funded. We know that growth is gonna occur once the sewer is there, and therefore, there's no point in painting that orange part dark green.
No, I totally agree.
And so, even though right now that might be what it is, there's no point in it. And so then when we're reviewing roads, we need to make sure that they're no longer farm-to-market roads. If we're asking the Roads and Bridges Department to maintain roads, they need to make sure they're allocating budget for that area for higher quality roads than for through those little, other sections up through there. That's
Maybe instead of the word should is likely. This is what it's likely
yeah,
to look
right,
like.
or whatever.
Yeah, this is what,
Well, and I think the other thing
What
that
we
ends up
expect.
happening is that you can take things that are already in existence and then make some correlations in that it helps council end up making these decisions in the future. It's just like having an industrial park here and having an inadequate road system without going straight through Fairplay to get to the interstate. That just makes no sense whatsoever. Hopefully, it'll occur to them at some point in time that they're gonna have to have a bypass type road that's gonna take care of this park, and it might be why they can't sell a piece of property in there right now. Who knows? But you can't get, it's nice to have it close to 85, but if you can't get a more direct route without going through Fairplay, what manufacturer is gonna go in there?
I guess what my question was, do you think this is more reflective, because you mentioned it in your comments earlier, than the current future land use map?
It's closer, especially because of the 123 corridor between Seneca and Westminster. I would look back at some of the old maps and see how they did it. We used some striped areas on some of the older maps. I spent a lot of time this weekend going back and looking at some of our older maps and how they delineated some of this stuff. And it really kind of looked pretty good. I haven't found a copy of the original future land use map that was done in '96, not that it would matter, but I like to go back and look at these different things and just see how they translated the information, because, I don't know. This is, guess what it is?
Real hard on this one last week.
Oh, I know it is, this is more of a Euclidean zoning type look at this thing, okay? It's like, and we don't have a Euclidean zoning system in Oconee County, period. So,
Mr. Markovich, if you would just explain what Euclidean zoning was, that may be helpful in what you're talking about, because you're saying.
the old concept of zoning where we would take actually specific areas, we called them districts back then. A district means a whole new thing now. But they might be specific areas, and you might have an area up there that's zoned for just residential. And in this particular area, it's not plat by plat. Nowadays, we zone plat by plat instead of doing big areas in specific regions. I don't know that I made things more confusing, but I think this map is better than the other one was.
Okay, that was my question.
Quick.
Yeah, that's what I needed.
You turned a bunch of brown into green.
Yeah.
all right, are we clear on what is gonna happen between now and our next meeting with Ms. Bell, Mike Smith,
Yes,
and the planning department?
I am.
Yes, we're taking one more bite out of the elephant.
Okay, so if there's nothing else on the comp plan, let's move on to the corridor plan working group. Adam, if you will.
How you holding up?
I've been dozing.
Hang in there, we're almost there.
There it is.
We were asked
little while ago by Planning and Economic Development to look at certain entry corridors to the county. Separately, we met with county council to look at traffic and safety along Highway 123. It doesn't, to me, it makes sense that might as well combine those two efforts into one kind of working group or subcommittee and do it like that. Because now, just to highlight that point, the last hour and 10 minutes, we've been trying to do a major project on the dais as a group, kind of not looking at each other. So I would think that perhaps looking at the corridor planning could be done in a subcommittee. At the last meeting, y'all asked me to kind of show you what it could be made up of and what it could look like. This is more this is a first blush at it. You all can feel free to change this kind of makeup of it or really anything about it, but this was kind of my intent is to, if you all want a working group or a subcommittee of planning commission to work on these corridors, this is how it could look like. So I guess the first question is, do you all want to do it up here, or do you all want to kind of do it as a subcommittee? The sign design, and landscaping, as well as traffic and safety for the requested corridors by Planning and Economic Development and County Council.
Do you feel like that you could get this group of, this makeup of people together?
Not sure about A, but B, C, and D I could.
Adam, we'd also talked about rotating the members, not just having 2 or 3 of the same members for the whole 6 items. 1, 2,
4 items.
4, 5, actually 5 items. The intent, traffic and safety, landscaping, signage, and building design standards. Rotating the planning commission members for maybe each one of those, and that way the whole commission would take part in it, but it wouldn't be the same 2 to 3 people that does it all.
Certainly, do that.
When you say we talked about rotating, who is we?
Me and Mr. Chapman. Because he had mentioned we'd got together and discussed how the possible group would be made up, and that was one of his suggestions as well, to rotate the members for each, unless the commission decided they wanted the same 2 or 3 people to work on each one of them. They would be asked at the update section if they were wanting to switch out members to work on a specific thing. If your knowledge or whatever, I don't know the wording, but you're strong about traffic and safety, maybe you want to work on that part of the plan. Or if you're more passionate about building, whatever, and then we get people that were passionate and wanted to be a part of a specific part of this corridor plan, to get their ideas or the people's ideas into that, rather than having 2 people work on the entire corridor plan and bringing it back to planning commission. That way everybody would have a chance to work on it and know what was going on.
And if you go by the meeting count, if 2 people want to volunteer, and it takes the maximum number of meetings for each of the 5 categories, you're looking at 23 unique meetings of the subcommittee, not counting when you come to the planning commission meeting.
And there would be 20-something extra meetings that the 2 to 3 people would be volunteering for. This way, the meetings will be split up. Not any 2 or 3 would handle the whole 20-something meetings. We would have them split up between members and get this thing done.
So if I may,
Go.
I guess the first question is, do we want to do a subcommittee for this?
Yeah, that's the first question, right
The
there.
first question is, do we want to do that? That's the first, I believe, first conversation that we need to have.
Do we need to have a motion to coordinate a subcommittee?
Yeah.
Or is that something that you can
I
do?
would make a motion that we have a subcommittee that works on the corridor plan.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Who are we talking about, including other than commission members on this subcommittee?
Under the makeup portion, oh, you don't have the screen?
No.
Okay, on the back.
Back of your
It's on the
agenda
back
pages.
of your, paper here.
Back page
On the back page. There's stakeholders back there too.
So stakeholders, staff,
Property owners.
industry professionals, property owners.
Can I make a comment?
Yep.
Gwen and I and Adam were on that subcommittee that did the executive summary. And believe me, there's a lot of time spent in there. It wasn't just 3 or 4 or 5 meetings. It was hours and hours that were spent. So they can say 2 or 3 meetings, but there's a pretty good chance that there's going to be a lot of time spent other than those 2 or 3 meetings. So be aware of that.
Well, I love the idea of another group of individuals taking on this issue.
I think we have a motion and a second that we have a subcommittee.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Uh,
Opposed? Okay, now we have the subcommittee.
So now you all have
Concept
voted
to
to form a
form
subcommittee. The first step in that, to me, is either, well, I guess you have 2 options. You can either look at this potential makeup down here, planning commissioners, property business, industry owners, stakeholder group, and staff. Forget E for a second, because that's kind of
As needed.
an as needed kind of group. So if you all are fine with B, C, and D, if there's any other kind of generic groups or specific groups you all want to add, let's look at that. Or a couple of y'all, it really could even be just one of you if you wanted, but 1 to 3 planning commission members. Also, just as a note, we're gonna advertise these and do minutes and the whole thing. Probably not gonna YouTube it, but they will be formal meetings that are open to the public as well. They won't be behind closed doors, so to speak.
All right, how many members of the planning commission do y'all feel needs to be on this group, in this group?
Don't you
Do
think
we
they
need a
may
motion?
vary
Can it
depending on the
vary?
topic?
I think you need more on some and less on some, so I like the way it's phrased here. In fact, I was gonna make a motion that we adopt this Carter Planning Working Group makeup, and then as we proceed with each section, can we
Yeah.
Do that.
This will
take volunteers
Yeah.
for the part A of that? Let
I'll
Mr.
second
Chapman,
that. That's your motion?
When are we gonna find out who these property, business owners, industry owners, all those people? I mean, the specific people.
That to me would be, so for instance, just the kind of schedule at the top I've kind of laid out there, build the working group. So at that working group, I mean, that's when whatever planning commission members will be on the planning, on that will help inform that. That's not saying we can't switch them out as we're looking at things as well. And plus, we have to be aware that they may not be able to commit to all things. So, but I mean, completely open suggestion and not trying to, that's why it just says business and industry. It has, and we can do more or less. I mean, it's fairly flexible. There's nothing written in stone for it.
I had mentioned a facilitator. And I actually talked to the administrator about it. And there were specific reasons that I wanted to do that. And I think it would really make these things go a lot easier on everyone involved and give us a better product if we have a good facilitator that's aligned with this or is knowledgeable about this particular topic, say traffic safety, et cetera. I don't know if that'll ever go through or if that'll work forward or not, but that was one of the ideas that I had thought about at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm
I
not
think-
asking for anybody to say, let's do it or
I think
whatever.
facilitators are always a great thing. Right now, I think that we need to get this built and get their working plan put together in front of them.
We have a motion to accept,
Adopt the possible quarter planning working group makeup.
yes, and a second.
Let's do it.
If we don't have any further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Now, who's the first lucky couple of planning commission members? Or three?
I think we all should have input on who is on this. As far as stakeholders and all of that.
Is it an interview process? Is it a make recommendations for application? How is that gonna?
I would recommend, that was my next motion, would be to make the motion that the commission instruct the staff to make proposals as to who would be the property, business, industry owners, stakeholder groups. I'm sure you've got a group of folks that, because we can put out an application process, but I think it's probably gonna come down to volunteers. Who's got enough interest in it to show up?
Right.
That's it,
And
showing up.
if we start putting, any kind of our standards on it, we might be limiting who's there. So perhaps if we had a list or a grouping of folks, and let's say, if we have our first meeting in the build working group with our poor suckers from the planning commission, and then you bring in the list of potential folks, that would be the first meeting.
So, if I may, I don't think that's a bad idea, but I'm gonna push back on that because then it's Adam's planning, commission subcommittee.
Oh, so do we need to bring the people?
I think
Okay,
you
that's
all
cool.
being I'll certainly give you a list of the businesses there, I'll give you all everything that you all need to help find, and you all know people already. I mean, I'm sure all of you have at least one person or one business, something like, oh, maybe this group or that group. And that's really what you all need to bring to it, or the members of it. So we did vote to create a subcommittee. We voted to have that working group makeup. If you all so that's kind of part of the reason, is for us to get this off the whole commission, give it to a couple people and have them rotate in and out if y'all want to. That doesn't mean we can't rotate it out. So I don't really want to give you all a list of people that you should have on this subcommittee outside of the generic, this kind of the larger groups. I think that should be on you all. That's my opinion. If y'all want me to, motion and vote, I'll give you a list.
Is this still talking about the 123 corridor between Seneca and Clemson?
So this is the 123 corridor. It's also talking 11.
28.
Thank you. 76.
It's applicable to the
123. I'm doing it in Alpha, and 130. Entry corridors.
That's information we should have gotten before we voted.
I brought that up, that Planning and Economic Development did ask us to look at all the corridors. At the last meeting, I believe I gave you a rundown of that as well. Yes, but so the Planning and Economic Development asked for Highway 11, and those ones I just mentioned.
In other words, this is a template that'll be moved from one corridor to another corridor, and perhaps some amendments made to it or whatever, but this is just the basic concept.
Is council asked us for these corridors?
Council asked us to look at the traffic safety on 123, Planning and Economic Development. Committee of Council asked us to look at the other four corridors.
I just want to go on record that I think we are infringing on too many rights taken on every single major road in this county and start putting regulation on them. I just want to be on the record saying that.
What's our next step?
So Mrs.
Don't know
Lyles
what the
brought,
next-
Mrs. Lyles brought up the group as a whole, looking at the people on the working group subcommittee. If that's what y'all wanna do, we can certainly do that. If y'all wanna leave that, if you all want to then pick who's gonna be on the subcommittee to start off with, that could be the next step.
So this is supposed to be a very broad thing so that it can be applied, because you cannot apply the same standards to 123 that you're going to apply to Highway 11.
Correct.
So this is supposed to be only a very broad thing that they come up with, not a detailed thing that applies to 123.
So for 123, so specifically 123, that was that joint council meeting, was asked to look at traffic and safety. So that's one portion of it, so it says traffic and safety. That being said, if we wanted to look at traffic and safety at the other corridors at that point in time, we certainly could. That would be, it would seemingly be kind of appropriate. We were asked to look at landscaping standards in regards to safety, for those other 123 as well as the other 4 entry corridors as noted. And so at that point, we could say, okay, this makes sense for here, this makes sense for here, you know, give each community their own identity and look at it individually versus just trying to say everything has to be like this. So we could, in my mind, we'd break it down by individual road, but that would be up to y'all.
And I'm under the assumption that this committee is still in charge of findings or ordinances or anything else, that this is a recommendation group that says, we think that this needs to take place here based on this information.
Correct, it would go from
It'd
this
go from that
subcommittee
committee
to
up to
plan.
here.
Up to here.
Yeah,
And this grouping.
just like the
only has-
executive summary went up here.
So if everyone had a couple meetings at this, was able to look at this piece by piece by piece by piece,
I do think it's the responsibility of planning to determine where we need to be planning, whatever that means. I think it would be great for another subgroup to be doing some of this grunt work of ideas, that we could say, hey, look at it under this filter, look at it under that filter. And ultimately, we're in charge of making those ultimate recommendations to council.
Well, the recommendation comes from here, not just from the subcommittee. It comes up to here, and then it comes up. So, yeah. It's not that.
I mean, we've got like 2 to 5 stakeholder groups. We're talking about the entire county. So how are you going to only take two to 5 groups to have input on something from Highway 11 to 28 to 123? I mean,
we could switch those out as well. So if we were looking at Highway 11, we could grab people down on exit 1. Or,
so everything can rotate, not just the planning commissioners.
Yeah, I'm assuming this is a template that we say, ooh, it worked well here, but we need to grab somebody in this area that, for this, as, in that committee, where people will evolve in and out of that committee, based on the corridor that's being discussed.
What's good for up in one particular geographic area is not gonna
Has
apply
no
down in
application
another.
down somewhere
Exactly.
else.
So
That's
you
my
adapt it
concern.
accordingly.
Yeah, that,
And then maybe one particular area says, we don't care what economic development wants, this is not what we want to do in this particular area. I think something is needed on 123, where Clemson's gonna grow us out of anything that we have a say over if we're not careful.
Where are we with this subcommittee?
we voted to make the subcommittee, we voted to accept the possible corridor planning working group makeup.
What do we need to do next?
Our next one would maybe determine which planning commissioners will start the group off, and maybe come up with an intent, and then we bring that back to whoever's on there, would bring it back to us here at the planning commission, and then we could go on to, the next step would be traffic and safety, and if we wanted to switch out members at that time, we could. or leave the same two to three members, just keep going down that line.
So what you're looking for then is planning commission members who will get together and come up with the intent. In
Correct.
other words,
With-
what the deliverable is.
With Adam's help, maybe.
So the way I have it outlined here is that the, step one is to build a group. Step two is to figure out why, we have to get to why we're doing it. For us to, so I think my second meeting here, a couple years back, you all said, the planning commission asked for a 123 corridor. I said, okay, and I did it, and you hated it. So because I just did the what, I didn't do the why. So the first step in this is we need to get to the why it's being done, and why will drive the rest of it. But we can certainly change that as well. It's all very flexible. But the first step is who's on the group, as far as on the planning commission. Which one of y'all want to start this off? One or two of y'all want to start this off?
And they're gonna deal with traffic.
No, they're gonna,
Well, the first is just this.
Intent.
the intent, and that's gonna
Why we're doing
include,
this. Oh,
that,
yeah.
that would be where you bring in your property business owners, because they want to have a say in why you're doing the corridor. That is your stakeholder groups. I don't know exactly who that is, but certainly you would want SEDOT and, the Roads and Bridges folks, because if your next step is traffic and safety, those are the first people who need to have say in why are you doing this? You know, if there's an issue, when we talked about that housing development that was gonna come into the intersection there at Bounty Land, and all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, they haven't even looked at how it's gonna impact right there at the railroad crossing and that little teeny tiny road right there in front of Blue Ridge Bank. Those are, you build the working group with the intention of making sure that you have all the people out of possible corridor planning working group makeup list to start on the next number two. And then they'll work on, and then they'll go to traffic and safety. And then if there's areas where all of the property and business owners and all of the stakeholder groups and all the industry professionals agree that there's sections where you want to be involved in a landscaping area, maybe on 130, then that group will meet with their appropriate people and they'll move on.
That's how I would have kind of started looking at it, but once again, if that's not how you all are looking at it, we can certainly reword this. This is just a suggestion.
And what time frame are you wanting to start this? Like, right away or after the
Holidays
first
are
of the year, or?
Holidays are a difficult time to start things since we're now into November. But as far as building the working group, getting the commitment from various groups down below, I think starting now for a January timeframe to actually putting pen to paper, that could be a logical timeframe for it. Just try to get, say, okay, we're gonna start, who's gonna be on it, you want us to, scheduling stuff during the holidays is hard. So, but soon, yeah.
As far as making recommendations or names of people that might be good to be on this committee, how does that work? Do we submit names to you? Do we?
I think if you have 1 to 2 planning commission members on there, you all can communicate a list to me and I can send it out to them. But you're not, for each individual portion, you're divesting your input in the nuts and bolts of it. You're giving it to a couple of your fellow planning commissioners to make those decisions and bring it back to planning commission. So it's gonna be I know everyone wants to touch it and everyone will touch it, but just building it up from a whole, we've been looking at it, just the outline of it now for a little bit, so we can all add on, or if you all wanna come back to a different setup for it, we can do that too. It's up to y'all.
Can this commission
Can I say something
decide
right
on
quick?
what roads or what corridors we want to address with this?
We were specifically asked to look at 5 roads. We could probably look at more. If we have a reason to look at less, then we would probably need to send have a conversation, a motion, a vote, and a letter back to either planning and economic development or county council.
I'm not ready to put restrictions on every through highway in the county. And that sounds like what you're looking for. If we're gonna have a subcommittee addressing every 5 miles of every road in this county is different from each other. If we're gonna have corridors that have special, let's address them one at a time.
I think the idea is, Andy, is that we're talking about corridors and there are 4 or 5, and he knows these specific numbers. And we're not trying to say that, okay, this one fits here, this one fits here, it's the same, goes from A, B, C to D. I think that we start out as a learning session with 123, and then if they decide that that looks pretty good, they may say, okay, let's look at corridor such and such, and then we adapt it to meet the needs of that or the wants of the people around that area for that particular corridor. We're not starting all over from the beginning, but we see what we learned from 123 may be applicable, and maybe some other things are not applicable. What goes on in the north doesn't apply down there in Fairplay. It's simple.
Not to interrupt anyone, it seems that Mr. Pearson's stepped away for a moment.
He did. I've taken the helm as vice chairman.
Oh,
Do I need to do anything?
no, I was just gonna break off, but if we're,
He's back.
Well, sorry, I'll maybe having a granddaughter born here shortly, so, if it's okay with everyone, I'm gonna turn the meeting over to Mike, and I'm gonna excuse myself.
Best wishes. Best wishes.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long night, so, Mike, it's yours.
We'll give him the hammer.
You want him, you can have a big one. It's yours. But y'all have say a prayer for my daughter, because the baby's actually not due until the end of the month. So we're a little bit early, but you know,
There's a lot of
women,
miracles going on, and yeah.
well,
we
you know,
don't-
women, they never on time, so, turn it over to Mr. Mike. Thank you, guys.
What were you saying?
I said, I'm always on time.
Do we need to do anything else from okay. So we've had
We have a motion that we are going to form a subcommittee. We have a motion that we accept the working group makeup. We are now looking for 2 or 3 planning commission members who are willing to start building the working group, which means that we are asking them to bring forth industry professionals, property and business owners, stakeholder groups, people that are interested in this thing, to come to a meeting and to sometime between now and the 1st of January, have a solid group that they can work with and move forward.
and do we have a couple of volunteers?
Last time I volunteered, I got sent to North Vietnam.
I am only hesitant to volunteer because of the amount of things that I've got going on for the remainder of this year.
Well, and I was going to suggest perhaps that Andy volunteer. I don't want to volunteer you, Andy, but since you have concern, and I would love to volunteer, but I'm also in a crunch for other reasons. Besides, I'm not gonna have any eyes left when I get finished reading all these pages anyway. But because I think you certainly would have an interest in focusing the intent of the group, so that you're clear in, you're not forming something that is uniform and picture cut out for every single area. And then maybe a couple other folks would be willing to volunteer and bring stakeholders into the,
I'll at least start doing, I do still work for a living.
and we would, yeah, and to me, I think it's important to know that if it moves forward, then there will be other people expected to also step up when they don't have a burden of things to take care of.
Is there, I mean, I would love to volunteer for this first part, but can we wait till January?
It's certainly up to y'all. I mean, you all can say that.
So do we want to start, I wish I could scroll down to this.
I cannot commit to one more meeting before January. I have a wedding December 1st,
Congratulations.
I tell you, we got weddings, we got babies
and
coming.
then I have another one in May, so, but I
We're
can
in
fit a few
November.
meetings in there in between.
We've got a couple of meetings left. I see no reason why we can't say that this should be one of our Jan 1 objectives, is to get this put together and start making headway on
I
this.
like that, yeah.
So do the two of you all want to,
As long as I don't have to do anything on it before January 1st, I'm good.
That'll work.
Get me through the holidays.
Okay.
so
It's up to y'all. Just need a motion voted. That'll be the,
I make a motion that the two that have stepped up, that we start this, the 1st of January.
I have one more thing. Can we include someone else, just because I don't want it, all of y'all know that Andy and I are very much against zoning and forcing property rights. I feel like we need a neutralizing opinion, so that we don't get a one-sided.
Maybe
here.
we could draft Mr. Barnett, I see him waving.
I mean, there should be some business owners and stakeholder groups as well, so I think that's a good starting point to define the intent anyway.
Okay.
And I do think that you are gonna, I would think that it would be y'all's job to talk to the group at large and say, our first issue is 123. These are the problems that we're seeing with 123. Our objective as a county has been so that it doesn't become an Easley or a Clemson. And what can we do to solve that with those people that actually own businesses in that area? I'm confident that they don't want it to become a Clemson, or because, I mean, Clemson's talking about building a bypass now around all those businesses. So I'm sure business owners would want to get involved to say, what can we do to stay relevant and keep safety in mind? So I'm sure you're going to get all sides and all views.
so there's a motion and a second for Mr. Gramling and Mrs. Lyles to build the working group for the corridors activity. That's the first part of it. Mrs. Lyles wanted to add something to it. You said add someone. You wanted to amend the
Someone.
motion.
well, did the motion restrict it to them, or did it simply,
Well, those were so just looking
the
at,
two that volunteered?
those are the two kind of volunteered positions. So if there's a third party, if there's a third person, we don't have to amend the motion. We just need to have that third person step forward.
You want to do it?
Well, I was looking at, we've got traffic, we've got landscaping, signage. I mean, there's
You
gonna
wanna
be a lot more going on too.
I'll
They
jump
may
in for the
rotate out.
intent.
They may rotate out.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm.
I would feel much better with Mr. Johnson there. I feel like when I tend to jump off the diving board, you tend to bring us back. I mean, I just feel like I
All
need,
right, so we've got three down, and
yeah,
Well, that's, well, I mean, we kind of all unfolding.
Yeah.
Are you willing?
Yes, I'm willing to do
Okay.
that starting in January.
So if you'll if you'll just finish, so the motion needs to be amended to include Mr. Johnson, if someone wants to do that.
Did all three of us just get volunteered by
We
somebody
did.
else?
hey, I jumped in.
I guess I'll make that motion to, I'll I would like to amend my motion to request that these three serve as the working group, construction crew for the,
Second for that?
I'll second.
Okay. So now the motion has been amended. Now we need a vote on amending that to include Mr. Johnson. This is all just stuff, so now someone, Mr. Johnson, if you would, a vote,
Well, we need to vote on amending
the motion.
the motion.
That's correct.
All those in favor? All those opposed?
Now the vote, now you all need to.
Now we need to vote on
The motion, the motion as a
the
whole.
motion, including those three people. All those in favor? Say aye. All those opposed? So the three of us will be involved in January in pulling things together.
I understand that as this progresses and we go into different phases, some different commission members may become part of it.
Pop in and out, exactly, as we're just kind of, just gonna sit down and develop the intent of this group and objective. So, we're moving on to unfinished business. It's 8:00, we're gonna try to get through the rest of this. Unfinished business, is there anything that we need to be dealing with tonight?
No, sir.
New business, is there any new business anybody wants to bring up?
I'll bring it up. Government is, and Mrs. Brock does a far better iteration of this, government's slow by design, all right? Development's fast, government's slow. We deal with people's property, people's money, people's lives. So although we just spent 2 hours and it feels like we're just kind of grinding through stuff, this is, just like you all saw the book as a whole and finally realized there were some issues with it, when you were looking at the individual pages, you didn't see it, that's kind of where we are. So although it kind of feels like you're like, we're doing good. This is kind of how the checks and balances work. So that's my little motivational speech for the end of the night.
We appreciate your new business input. Any other new business? All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
make a vote, because everybody.